I woke up to find myself locked in a hospital with 20 mental patients. A bullet comment floated before my eyes. Kill the only sane person to leave the hospital. I quickly took off my white coat and changed into a patient gown. But in the hallway, the sounds of fighting had already begun. He's the sane one. I saw him making a call yesterday to get discharged. Another person retorted, "You're the sane one, aren't you? Don't think I don't know you're faking it." Blood splattered. I stood there, frowning. If they were all sane, then who was I? My name is Felix, and I'm a doctor at a psychiatric hospital in a Southeast Asian country. On the day I was on duty, the hospital was enveloped in a thick fog, so dense I couldn't see my hand in front of my face outside the window. How strange, the weather forecast clearly said it would be sunny for the next few days. How could there be such a thick fog? Suddenly, a few bullet comments floated before my eyes. The death game starts now, so exciting. A death game with a bunch of mental patients? Interesting, interesting. I thought I was still half asleep. I pinched my thigh hard. At the same time, the sound of someone banging on the door suddenly came from the lobby. What kind of crappy game is this? I'm getting out of here. Damn it, who locked the door? You wanna die? With that, the man picked up a chair and smashed it against the glass door. The glass instantly shattered, scattering fragments everywhere. But within seconds, another intact glass door appeared before him. The man who smashed the door turned pale with fright. "There's a ghost." With that, he ran frantically. But soon, a rope descended from the ceiling. It tightened around his neck and kept rising. The man struggled desperately, but his feet were completely off the ground. His face grew redder and redder, and his eyeballs gradually protruded. A faint sound of neck bones breaking was heard. The man was hanged in the middle of the lobby. His burst eyeballs stared straight at me. I fought to suppress the urge to scream and quickly locked the door. This man was my patient. His name was Mike. Before he was admitted, he was a fitness instructor. If even he couldn't fight against this mysterious force, then what could I possibly do? Just then, bullet comments appeared again. So exciting. Can a few more people smash the door? I want to watch. What's the use of smashing the door? They'll all be hanged. Only by killing the only sane person can you leave the hospital. But, it seems the patients don't know yet. No, they know. Through the surveillance monitors in the duty room, I could see that the patients who were originally trying to escape by jumping out the windows suddenly quieted down after these bullet comments appeared. They could see the bullet comments too. On the surveillance wall, a dozen pairs of eyes suddenly looked up, staring intently at the monitor. It sent a chill down my spine. Yes, they knew there must be a doctor on duty in the hospital. And a doctor must be a sane person. They would come to kill me. I was about to puke from fear. I hastily took off my white coat and changed into a set of patient's clothes. The hallway was quiet. I took a deep breath, grabbed a few tranquilizers, and tiptoed to the nearest patient room. Sure enough, not long after I ran out, several figures rushed into the on-call room. Then, the sound of rummaging through an office began. Someone yelled angrily, "Where's the doctor? Where the hell did they go?" Another voice said sinisterly, "If the doctor is the sane one, then the game is too easy." The angry guy impatiently said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Our goal now is to find the doctor." That low voice spoke again, "Maybe the doctor isn't even in the game. And you, dragging us here to find a non-existent doctor, are you trying to cover up the fact that you're the sane one?" The angry guy was clearly flustered and roared, "You're talking nonsense." But the other person didn't answer him, just loudly said to the others around, "Chris is the sane one. I heard him say yesterday that he was getting discharged today." Chris pushed him away, "Cut the crap. I'm a mental patient, I'm not getting discharged." As he spoke, he suddenly seemed to remember something and pointed at the man standing opposite him. "Actually, you're the one." Before he could finish, the man grabbed a scalpel and lunged at Chris's carotid artery. Blood spurted. Chris clutched his neck, trembling as he fell to the ground. The man looked down at him condescendingly, sneering, "We'll know if you're the damn sane one after we kill you." Time ticked by, second by second. The blood gushing from Chris's neck stained the entire office red. It also stained several patient gowns standing near him. "Help me, I'm not the sane one." "It's Victor, he forged a psychiatric certificate, he's the sane one." "Help me." The hemostatic forceps and gauze that could save him were right on the table. But no one moved. Everyone still alive in the duty room watched Chris coldly. Until he stopped moving. Chris was dead, but the thick fog outside the window still hadn't dissipated. Someone tentatively reached out and pushed the window. The window didn't budge. That person turned around, trembling, and pointed at Victor. "The game isn't over. You lied." Victor watched them warily and slowly said, "I didn't lie." Chris really was a sane person. He was hospitalized because he abused cats and dogs. He needed to be hospitalized to avoid online harassment. But no one cared what he said. The person by the window neurotically chewed on their braid and said, "No, no, no, no." He leaped up, waving his arms, and pointed at Victor. "Chris said you forged a psychiatric certificate. Only sane people need to forge one, so you're the sane one." Victor, gripping the scalpel, sliced off the man's braid and roared, "Ken, get a grip. I raped several elementary school girls. If I were sane, would I do that? I'm a mental patient, I'm the mental patient." Ken stared blankly at the braid that had fallen to the floor. He grinned strangely. Right, you raped elementary school girls, you raped my sister. My sister died, I went crazy, sister's braid is on your belt." He suddenly grabbed the scalpel with one hand. Blood trickled down his fingers. Victor roared and forcefully pulled out the scalpel. 4 fingers fell to the ground. But Ken seemed to feel no pain. He clenched his mutilated hand and punched Victor in the eye socket. Victor quickly fought back. Ken was missing 4 fingers and couldn't hold a weapon. Victor, on the other hand, wielded sharp scalpels in both hands and soon poked several holes in him. Blood soaked through the patient's gown. Ken didn't even bat an eyelash, just laughed neurotically. "Sister's braid is on your belt, mom's eyes are on your belt, dad's kneecaps are on your belt." Victor visibly panicked. Taking advantage of his size, he shoved Ken to the ground and roared, "Go to hell." With that, he raised the scalpel high and plunged it towards Ken's neck. In the nick of time, bullet comments appeared again. "So boring, do mental patients have no IQ? This Ken is incoherent, clearly not normal." On the other hand, this Victor, killing Chris then Ken, playing the blame game like a pro, who'd believe he's a mental patient. My heart tightened. Sure enough, the remaining people in the duty room also saw the bullet comments. Victor's movement paused, and he hurriedly explained, "Don't believe the nonsense in the bullet comments, I was originally." Before he could finish, a pair of hemostats pierced his eardrum and came out the other side. White brain matter and red blood, drip, 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 fell to the ground. Victor fell heavily. Ken, clutching the braid, rubbed it on the ground, smearing it with Victor's blood. Then he started chewing it voraciously. "Good girl, school ends at 3:30, I'll pick you up. Eat fried skewers, sis, eat chicken legs, sis, come drink tofu soup." As he spoke, he used his intact left hand to scoop out more brain matter from Victor's ear and fed it to the non-existent sister in the void. "Drink soup. Why aren't you drinking soup?" He roared in anger, but a few seconds later, it turned into sobbing. "I was wrong, I shouldn't have gone to the internet cafe to play games. If I had picked you up on time, you wouldn't have been raped by this beast. He cried one moment and laughed the next. The people in the duty room looked at each other. Should we kill him? The person holding the hemostat said contemptuously, looking at him, you can tell he's not sane. Killing him is useless. Another person asked, so what do we do next? After a short silence, the man holding the hemostats bent down and touched the computer monitor. The monitor is still warm, the duty log is only half written, the doctor must still be in the hospital. Find the doctor must be a sane person. Footsteps surged out of the duty room, getting closer and closer to me. I cowered in the closet, desperately covering my mouth. Afraid my breathing was too loud and would be heard. In just half an hour, 3 dead and 1 injured. This so-called death game was utterly insane. They mustn't find me, or I'd surely die. But what on earth should I do to avoid them? Right. Except for Mike, who was banging on the door at the very beginning, no one here was my patient. Today's rounds hadn't been done yet, so they didn't know what I looked like. Fake illness, I have to fake illness. I quickly used a knife to mess up my hair. Then I loosened my collar and lay down on the hospital bed. Just then, the door was pushed open, and a patient walked straight towards me. I sat up and stared straight at him. Then I lunged at him. Honey, why did you find a mistress? Honey, what does she have that I don't? Honey, I'm pretty now, honey. The patient was startled by me and turned to leave. I clung to his arm, crying and looking up, honey, please don't go. I didn't want our son to die. Let's have another one. The patient kicked me away annoyedly. I leaned against the wall, crying. The voice of the man with the hemostat came from outside the door. Mark, what's going on? Did you find the doctor? Mark spat in my direction and said, nah, Lewis, just bad luck, ran into a crazy woman. With that, he left the room to rejoin the main group. I chased after him, honey, don't go. What does that bitch have that I don't, honey? You said you'd love me forever, you lied to me. Lewis looked at me with disgust and waved his hand, ignore her, let's go find the doctor. Several people bypassed me and continued walking forward. I breathed a sigh of relief and silently moved in the opposite direction. But just then, the bullet comments lit up again. The doctor is mixed in with the patients, they don't seem to know yet. Exciting, truly exciting, the doctor is awesome. Lewis's steps suddenly halted, and he looked at me suspiciously. My heart was about to jump out of my throat. But I still pretended to be oblivious, muttering softly. That bitch, what does that bitch have that I don't? When you married me, you said you'd take care of me forever, you said it. You're all bastards, all bastards. But it was no use. Lewis, holding the hemostat, walked towards me step by step. I trembled and grabbed his pant leg, honey, you're home, it's good that you're home, the kids are waiting for you to eat. The next second, my chin was forcefully grabbed. Lewis looked at me scrutinizingly, then suddenly ripped open my collar. Buttons scattered on the floor. Honey? The man repeated strangely, then laughed, a mental patient should be willing to sleep with her husband, right? With that, he reached out a hand and tore off my pants. Unless, you're not a mental patient. In full view of everyone, he casually took off his own pants, revealing his disgusting, ugly organ. Then he pushed me into a corner and excitedly started caressing downwards. I didn't try to dodge at all, even smiling as I met him. The next second, a foul stench filled the air. Lewis suddenly recoiled his hand, shouting, holy crap, so disgusting. On his hand was a fresh pile of my poop. Lewis gagged and retreated. I nonchalantly chased after him, honey, come quick. He desperately tried to shake me off. But I refused to let go. Honey, why do you despise me? Did you fall for the other woman? Why won't you sleep with me? Lewis shoved me away, roaring, "Get lost." I sat on the floor and burst into tears. Lewis rushed into the nearest bathroom and washed his hands over and over again with soap. When he finished washing his hands for the last time and was about to come out, the remaining few people blocked the bathroom door. Lewis frowned unhappily. "What are you guys doing? Hurry up and find the doctor." Mark sneered, "Stop pretending. You're the real doctor, aren't you?" Lewis kicked him and roared, "Are you crazy?" Mark snorted coldly, "If you're not the doctor, how did you know where the duty log was? How did you know which computer belonged to the doctor?" Lewis looked at him incredulously. "What are you freaking out about? I ran down from upstairs with you, did you forget?" Mark's expression wavered slightly. Lewis added, "Old Mark, those people are all lying to you. Only I can lead you to the real doctor." Mark frowned, as if seriously considering it. The bullet comments quickly lit up. "So funny, the doctor's acting is truly god tier. Hurry up and kill, so annoying. Don't they know? If 4 people don't die today, the corpses in the morgue will rush out. Corpse siege. The most thrilling plot is here." The moment I saw the bullet comments, my hair stood on end. What the hell is a corpse siege? And what does 4 people must die mean? So far, 3 people have already died. Does this bullet comment mean 1 more person has to be killed? The atmosphere in the bathroom changed instantly. The way those few people looked at Lewis now carried a hint of murderous intent. Seeing the situation was bad, Lewis quickly said, "Don't be impulsive. Let's go back and kill Ken. That way, 4 people will have died today, and the corpses in the morgue won't." Before he could finish, Mark picked up a mop and knocked the hemostat out of Lewis's hand. He roared, "Stop pretending, you're the doctor." Lewis lost his weapon. The others no longer held back, pouncing on Lewis, punching and kicking him. At first, Lewis tried to get up and run away. But soon, someone grabbed his hair and slammed his head hard against the sink. Bloody water splashed everywhere. Lewis quickly fell into the sink, motionless. At the same time, the sound of a door opening suddenly came from a distance. Mark exclaimed joyfully, "He really is the doctor. He's dead," and the door opened. With that, he led the group running towards the lobby. As he passed me, he glanced at me with some unease. I grabbed a handful of poop, threw it at him, and giggled. Mark and the others dodged with disgust, didn't look at me again, and hurried towards the door. I quickly wiped myself clean, put on my pants, and sprinted in the opposite direction. I don't know what door opened. But it definitely couldn't have been the main hospital door. Because I was still alive, the game wouldn't end. I hid in the director's office on the 2nd floor. Through the glass, I watched the situation on the 1st floor. Mark and his group rushed to the lobby entrance, pushing hard against the glass door. But the glass door didn't budge. Mark cursed loudly but didn't dare to smash the door. Amidst the clamor, a strange sound of footsteps came from the elevator. Mark turned his head abruptly. Several pale-faced corpses slowly walked out of the elevator. The crowd erupted in terrified screams. They scattered and fled, desperately running in the opposite direction of the elevator. Mark roared, "No, we killed 4 people, why did the corpses from the morgue still appear?" No one answered his question. Everyone was busy running for their lives. I locked the director's office door tightly. My heart pounded like a drum. Yes, 4 people were already dead. Why were the corpses still coming to kill people? Could it be, the bullet comments were lying? Yes. The bullet comments were problematic. The first bullet comment said there was only 1 sane person in the hospital, and killing that sane person would end the game. However, Chris, who abused cats and dogs, Victor, who raped little girls, and Lewis, who was clear-headed, were not truly mentally ill. And after they died, the game didn't end. This was the first contradiction in the bullet comments. Later, the bullet comments said that 4 people had to be killed, otherwise the corpses in the morgue would riot. But 4 people had already died, and the corpses from the morgue still appeared. Could it be? Whenever numbers were involved in the hints, the bullet comments were saying the opposite. There was actually only 1 mental patient in the hospital. Killing 4 people would trigger the corpse riot. The first-floor lobby was filled with wails and howls. Soon, someone was surrounded by corpses and, like pigs and sheep being slaughtered, had their limbs torn off and their internal organs eaten. The originally spotless lobby floor tiles were now covered in bone fragments, with blood mixed with stomach fluids and brain matter, stickily coating the ground. Like some kind of slaughterhouse. I fought back the urge to vomit and climbed onto the top of the director's wardrobe. After death, rigor mortis sets in. These corpses were no exception. When they attacked, their limbs were stiff, making it basically impossible for them to jump. So, hiding in a high place could buy me a chance to survive. I don't know how much time passed, my legs were numb. The slaughter on the first floor finally stopped. I forced myself to look downstairs, and at a glance, I saw several heads of people who had died with their eyes open. But strangely, those corpses were gone. Soon, footsteps were heard on the second floor as well. The footsteps grew closer. I curled up on top of the wardrobe, not daring to breathe. The wooden floor creaked as it was stepped on, followed by the sound of a window opening. Damn it! I was too nervous just now. I only remembered to lock the door and forgot to lock the window. A faint sound. My heart almost stopped. Someone came in. The person panted heavily, "Damn it, monsters, monsters. This voice is Mark." Through the crack in the closet door, I saw he was covered in blood, his left shoulder almost torn open, revealing white bone. And his right hand tightly gripped a scalpel, the tip of which seemed to be someone's brain matter. My stomach churned. I clamped my hand over my mouth, forcing myself not to vomit. Luckily, Mark didn't notice me. He just quickly locked the window and pulled down the blinds. Then, he pressed his eye to the peephole, watching the commotion in the hallway outside. More footsteps and low moans came from the hallway. Mark's body tensed instantly, and his grip on the scalpel tightened. The corpses in the hallway were banging on the door. But luckily, the director's office door was quite sturdy. The corpses couldn't break it down, so they continued on, looking for their next target. Mark seemed to let out a sigh of relief, leaning against the wall, panting heavily. Suddenly, the lights flickered a few times. The entire room plunged into darkness. Mark's panting also disappeared. In the empty office, the air became eerily quiet. I instinctively held my breath. After a few dozen seconds, the lights came back on. I screamed out loud. Outside the crack of the wardrobe, a grayish-white eyeball was staring intently at me. Mark flung open the closet door. "You're the doctor, aren't you?" The bullet comments didn't lie to us. "Your acting is good, but not good enough." I fell to the ground in a disheveled state, my elbow throbbing with immense pain. Meanwhile, Mark had already raised the scalpel high, stabbing fiercely towards my neck. "Kill you, and the game will be over. Go to hell." I endured the sharp pain, grabbed the floor lamp, and smashed it violently at him. The light bulb exploded on his face, and shards pierced his eyes. Mark clutched his eyes, howling in agony. Panting, I walked towards the door, but suddenly, a series of footsteps and moans came from the hallway. It was the corpses from the morgue, attracted by our noise. The corpses were banging on the door. Panicked, I tried to climb back onto the wardrobe. But my ankle was firmly gripped by Mark. He reached for the knife. You're the doctor, kill you and the game will end." He found the scalpel. The scalpel stabbed fiercely into my calf. Sharp pain instantly spread. I kicked his arm away. I roared, "It doesn't matter if I'm the doctor anymore. What matters is that the bullet comments are lying." Mark scrambled up from the floor and staggered towards me. "How could the bullet comments lie? You damn bitch. I should have killed you long ago." He pressed closer, and I retreated step by step. Until I bumped into the director's desk. I had no way out. Am I going to die? Am I going to die at his hands? Suddenly, my fingertips touched something hard. I snapped my head around. It was the director's award trophy. In a fraction of a second, I gritted my teeth, lunged for the desk, grabbed the trophy, and smashed it violently against Mark's head. "You're the one who should go to hell." Blood gushed from the top of Mark's head. He let out a muffled groan and swayed unsteadily. I don't know where I found the strength, but I gripped the trophy tightly and smashed it against his temple again. "Go to hell. You animal." Mark fell heavily to the ground. Blood streamed down his face, pooling on the floor. And the smell of blood seemed to excite the corpses outside the door. They became even more agitated, banging on the door with greater force. Bang, bang, bang. Dust rained down from the walls. The old security door teetered precariously. I was sweating all over, but my palms were ice cold. "Felix, don't panic, don't panic. There's a way, there must be a way." Just then, a fire escape plan on the wall caught my attention. There was actually an access panel in the ceiling of this office. The access panel connected the entire building. If I could find the right path, maybe I could crawl to the other side of the building. I moved a chair onto the desk, then stepped on the chair to reach for the grid of the access panel. The panel hadn't been opened in who knows how long. The grid was a bit rusty and stuck tight. I used all my strength but still couldn't remove the grid. Bang! The security door was kicked open. 7 or 8 corpses scrambled in, the stench of decay hitting me right in the face. I was terrified to the extreme, unleashing unprecedented strength. Snap! I pulled the grid open and scrambled inside. Then I kicked the chair away. Suddenly, a cold touch on my ankle. A corpse had grabbed my ankle. On my calf, the wound Mark had given me was still dripping blood. That corpse obsessively clutched my calf, its decaying head moving towards the wound as if to kiss it. I struggled desperately but was no match for its strength. What to do, what to do? There are no weapons in the ventilation shaft. No, I have a weapon. I pulled a syringe from my pocket, aimed it at its eyeball, and stabbed hard. Corpses don't feel pain. But it did pause for a second. Now. I pulled out my right leg and quickly closed the grate. These 2 actions nearly exhausted all my strength. I lay on the ceiling, panting heavily. Below the grate, the corpse looked up unwillingly. But soon, it was attracted by the sound of its companions chewing on Mark. It squeezed into the horde of corpses, grabbed Mark's internal organs, and began to tear at them voraciously. I closed my eyes weakly. Finally, I dry heaved. But all that came out was yellow bile. I glanced at my watch. Since this damn game started, I hadn't eaten for nearly 8 hours. Hunger swept over my entire body. The knife wound on my calf throbbed, tugging at my nerves. No. I can't just sit here and wait to die. I have to treat the wound and find something to eat. Otherwise, even if I'm not killed, I'll starve to death. I took off my jacket and wrapped it around my calf. I crawled slowly through the access tunnel. I don't know how much time passed. The wound on my calf had already started to get infected. Just then, I saw the long-lost bullet comments again. Oh my God, the corpse riot is too scary. It seems like only 2 people are alive now, right? Yeah, the doctor is injured, and the other one is still at full health. I think the doctor is in trouble. Only me and 1 other person left alive. The other person is still at full health. Then, isn't that very dangerous for me? I slapped myself across the face. Felix, don't be distracted by the bullet comments. Find the pharmacy first. Soon, a glimmer of light appeared ahead. Below was the pharmacy. I lay on the ceiling, observing for several minutes. I found that the pharmacy window glass was shattered all over the floor, and there were some signs of a struggle outside. A corpse lay sprawled outside the counter, its death gruesome. But luckily, there were no living people here. In this death game, the living were more terrifying than the dead. I carefully lifted the grate and slowly slid down. From the rightmost shelf, I found the glucose I needed. After downing a bottle of glucose, the hunger pang subsided significantly. I then found saline solution and, gritting my teeth, cleaned the wound. Intense pain spread through me. My forehead was covered in sweat, and my fingers began to tremble. Endure it, I comforted myself, this game will end sooner or later. But just as I turned to get iodine and sterile gauze, a hand suddenly pressed down on my shoulder. I whipped around. The medicine bottle fell to the floor, shattering with a crisp sound. Standing before me was a man in a patient's gown. He stared at me intently, a strange smile on his face. Finally found you, Felix. No, no. This person, how could he be here? Are you surprised I'm still alive? The man smiled and leaned down to look at me. Or perhaps, you didn't expect to die at my hands either? The scalpel in his hand was still dripping blood. I subconsciously stepped back a few paces. His name was Ben. 5 years ago, my younger sister was terminally ill, with no cure. My parents took my sister to Ben's private clinic, hoping my sister could receive hospice care there. But unexpectedly, Ben wasn't a doctor at all, but a quack practicing medicine illegally. He drugged my parents and sister, harvested their organs, and engaged in illegal organ trafficking. By the time I realized my parents were missing and contacted the police, my parents and sister were long gone, not even their bones remained. I took Ben to court. What I got was his psychiatric evaluation. Ben suffered from severe schizophrenia and was legally insane at the time of the crime, thus he could not be sentenced to death. His connections probably played a significant role. His sentence was reduced again and again, and he was released from prison a few months ago. Due to the sensational nature of his past crimes, many news media outlets tried to track his whereabouts after his release. But they never managed to find him. It turned out he was hiding in this very mental hospital. Trembling, I grabbed the medical scissors beside me and pointed them at him. "You animal, you don't deserve to live. You should have gotten a bullet." Ben burst out laughing. "A bullet? I'm just a poor mental patient, why should I get a bullet?" After a pause, he smiled at me again. "Felix, you look so much like your mother. Want to know how I gouged out her corneas?" I roared, "You animal." With that, I brandished the scissors and lunged at his chest. Ben was tall and strong. He grabbed my wrist with one hand. The difference in strength between men and women was astounding. I struggled with all my might, but he just casually pushed me, and I fell onto the counter. The shattered glass pierced my arm, and the sharp pain brought physiological tears to my eyes. But I had no time to wipe my tears. Ben had already walked up to me. He stomped on my head. Glass fragments dug into my face. I screamed in pain. And Ben's tone was extremely cheerful. "You can see the bullet comments too, right, Felix? Then you must know that only the two of us are left alive now. Kill you, and the game is over." With that, he stretched contentedly and smiled smugly. God always favors me so much. After I get out, I have to offer 3 incense sticks to Buddha. I struggled to reach out my hand, to the left, and further to the left. Got it. I pried open the cap of the iodine bottle and threw it with all my might at his face. The man, immersed in joy, realized something was wrong and subconsciously dodged, but a few drops of iodine still splashed into his eyes. The brownish-red liquid instantly stained his patient gown. Ben froze for a second, then clutched his eyes and screamed maniacally, "Holy crap, my eyes. Felix, you bitch." He staggered backward, knocking over the medicine shelf. Medicines rained down on him, but he paid no attention, just frantically searched for water. Panting, I backed away, putting distance between us. A small amount of iodine wouldn't cause blindness, only a stinging pain. But when he recovered, I would likely face even more severe retaliation. I have to find a way to deal with him. I dragged my aching leg and arm out of the patient room. Like a headless fly, I wandered around aimlessly. Where was the operating room? Where was a scalpel? I had to get a weapon. But soon, a familiar moaning sound arose. The stench of decay wafted from the end of the corridor. It was the corpses from the morgue. They had found this place. I couldn't retreat, and I dared not advance. In desperation, I ducked into a nearby patient room. I moved a chair, intending to repeat my earlier trick and climb onto the ceiling. But the next second, the chair was kicked over. I rolled onto the floor. The untreated glass shards in my arm were pressed again, and an overwhelming pain washed over me. "Where do you think you're hiding, Felix?" Ben stomped on my chest. The heavy impact almost suffocated me. I struggled to push his leg away. But I couldn't move it at all. Ben sneered and pulled out a scalpel. I coughed and said, "The corpses will be here soon. If you kill me, you won't escape either." Ben laughed, holding the scalpel, and moved closer to me. "Are you kidding me? Kill you, and the game is over. The corpses are just part of the game." "Is that so? Are the corpses really just part of the game?" I looked past him, my gaze fixed on the doorway. Rapid footsteps sounded. A blood-soaked corpse rushed into the room, its movements unprecedentedly agile. Ben turned around in astonishment. The corpse picked up a chair and smashed it violently at Ben. On its pale face was a pair of clear, human eyes. The scalpel fell to the floor. Ben clutched his head and fled in disarray. Impossible. How can a corpse use tools? The corpse lunged at him, tightly gripping his neck. "You bastard, do you remember me? I'm Emily's father." Ben, as if seeing a ghost, screamed in panic, "You've got the wrong person, I don't know any Emily. She did it, Felix did it." The corpse roared, "You animal. You took my daughter's organs. She just wanted to date you. What heinous crime did she commit?" Ben bit his arm hard. Then he struggled to escape. But the next second, the exit of the patient room was blocked by another corpse. "Ben, you inhuman beast. Pay for my daughter's life. She was only 17. The woman, holding a knife, rushed towards Ben. Ben trembled and cowered in the corner. "No, no, you can't kill anyone. Murder is illegal, you'll be sentenced to death." The woman laughed shrilly, "I'd welcome it. If I kill you, I'll go join my Lily." With the help of Emily's father, I struggled to my feet. There wasn't a single part of my body that didn't ache. But I knew the tears streaming down my face now weren't because of the pain. "Aunt Sarah, don't be impulsive. He's right, killing someone is against the law, you'll be sentenced to death." The woman didn't look back at me, just stared intently at Ben, repeating again, "I'm not afraid of death." I smiled silently, "I know, but you still have your parents." I slowly walked forward and pried Aunt Sarah's hand open. I took the knife from her hand. Ben cowered in the corner, trembling all over. "Yes, Felix, you're doing the right thing. You can't kill anyone, you'll be sentenced to death." I tilted my head and smiled, "You're mistaken, it's not we." The scalpel plunged fiercely into Ben's eye socket. The blade twisted viciously in his eyeball. Ben let out an inhuman howl. I closed my eyes, savoring this moment. I said to him word by word in his ear, "But I'm a mental patient too. Just like you, I won't get the death penalty." With that, I pulled out the knife and once again, plunged it into his other eyeball. Twist. Twist hard. The surveillance cameras had long been smashed. I handed the knife to Aunt Sarah. And made a "please, you first" gesture. Aunt Sarah, holding the knife, severed Ben's wrist. Was it this hand? The hand that drugged my Lily? Or this one? Another cut. After a long time, Ben no longer had the strength to scream in pain. The knife fell into Emily's father's hands. He squatted down, aiming for Ben's groin. Before the police sirens wailed, I wiped the fingerprints of others off the scalpel. Ben seemed to still have a breath left, his throat making gurgling sounds. "You killed 20 people, you'll get life." I tilted my head and smiled. "You got it wrong, didn't you? There will only be you. They all killed each other, what does it have to do with me?" "You," the bullet comments said. I stabbed him in the chest again, bored, and said, "What bullet comments? Read too many novels, huh? That was just a projection. Whatever I wanted you to see, you saw." Ben's arm trembled violently, as if wanting to attack me. But how could that be useful? His wrists had long been severed by Aunt Sarah. Police sirens wailed, drawing closer. The moment the police broke down the door, I smiled, raised the knife, and slit Ben's throat. You know what? I'm the only mental patient in this game. And a mental patient's only wish is revenge. Dad, Mom, Sister. I've sent Dr. Chen down. You all better have a good time. 3 months later, the courtroom. According to the forensic psychiatric evaluation, the defendant, Felix, suffers from paranoid schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other mental disorders. At the time of the crime, the defendant was in a state of acute mental illness and lacked criminal responsibility. The gavel fell. The defendant Felix is hereby ordered to undergo compulsory medical treatment, to be carried out by a designated medical institution in accordance with the law. The duration of the compulsory medical treatment will be based on the recovery of her mental state, and a decision on whether to lift it will be made after regular medical evaluations. In the public gallery, Emily's father, Aunt Sarah, Uncle David, and many familiar and unfamiliar faces all breathed a sigh of relief. Some shed tears, others showed smiles of relief. As I was led out of the courthouse, several microphones were thrust in my face. No matter how the bailiffs admonished them, the reporters remained unmoved. Felix, you directly or indirectly caused the deaths of 20 people. How do you feel? I stopped and looked strangely at the person asking the question. Asking me? Shouldn't you be asking the families devastated by these people how they feel? The vehicle moved forward. On both sides of the road, people stood one after another holding flowers, silently watching me. Under the willow tree on the far left was a simple-looking old woman. A few years ago, her husband had a small argument with their tenant. The tenant then blocked their door lock. Unexpectedly, there was a gas leak, and an explosion occurred in their home. Her husband couldn't open the door no matter what, so he had no choice but to jump from the 7th floor. He died on the spot. And that tenant, who just wanted to play a prank, faked a psychiatric certificate and continued his job as a fitness instructor, flirting with young girls, quite at ease. That tenant's name was Mike. A few years later, he died on a hemp rope hand woven by the old lady. Standing next to the old lady was the owner of several kittens. Someone broke into his house, stole the cats, and cruelly skinned and abused them. That person's name was Chris, who planned to stay in the hospital for a few days to lie low. Unfortunately, he met me. As for Victor, who raped little girls, Louis, who dragged a female passenger on the subway, Mark, who molested students causing their suicide. To escape legal punishment, they hid in a mental hospital. Little did they expect that a meticulously crafted death game was on its way for them. Those strange bullet comments, the suddenly appearing noose, the walking corpses in the morgue. They weren't the ramblings of a mental patient, nor were they surreal fantasies. They were the carefully planned judgment of 20 families. All who are guilty shall be executed. The vehicle reached the end of the road. It passed a final mother and daughter holding bouquets of flowers. The child was still very young, holding a bunch of white lilies, and asked her mother puzzledly, "Is this auntie mentally ill?" The mother nodded. The child asked again, "Then why are we seeing her off?" The young mother gently caressed the child's face and replied softly, "We all owe her a thank you." The car window slowly closed, leaving the blue sky, white clouds, and the mother-daughter conversation behind. I faced the dazzlingly bright sunlight, tilted my head, and smiled. My name is Felix. I am the only mental patient in this death game. But I feel like I'm the only sane one.